Well, hello, everyone out there. This is John Byrne with Poets and Quants. This is the last session of our Center Court series for this time of the year. Of course, we'll have another go around later on in the year. I hope you've enjoyed it. We've had a lot of sessions exploring lots of different issues involving business schools, education, and the world of work. And we're going to end with the future of work with representatives from two American schools that are world-class MBA educations from UT Austin McCombs School of Business. We have Cara I'm not going to screw this up because, I'm half Italian. Cara Polissini, Director of Business Development, Career Management, and Corporate Relations. And then from LA, we have Phil Hahn, the Dean of Career Services at UCLA's Anderson School of Management. Phil and Cara, welcome. So let's get right to it. What do you identify as the core industry trends that you believe are shaping the future of work? Cara, let's start with you.
Thanks so much, Phil. And I'm very impressed by the pronunciation of my last name. It's almost impossible to get. You got it perfectly. So I've been thinking a lot about these questions the past week or so. And the three things that I keep coming around to about current trends that I think are really going to impact our next few classes of MBAs are, what do people want from work? That's changing. Yeah, and for anyone who read the most recent edition of the Wall Street Journal over the weekend, this was the cover story on the review section of an essay adapted from an upcoming book. It was affirming to me reading that because I really feel like it validated some of the trends that we're seeing with our own students. The second one that I would highlight would be the adoption of new technologies. Now, this isn't anything new. There's always new technologies coming out. However, I think the rate that we're seeing new technologies coming out that are really impacting work, that is something that our MBAs will have to be dealing with for the rest of their careers. And then third, the rate of change that's required for the rate of change of required skills in jobs. So as MBAs become leaders out in industry, whatever industry that is, they're going to be managing workforces. They're going to have to be upskilling or learning new skills with regularity, tying into that new technology. So those are the three that come to mind.
Yeah, that's true. And in some sense, number two, the rise of artificial intelligence primarily and generative AI may be scary, but on the other hand, there are going to be tremendous opportunities for MBAs in this field because there's so many startups, so many early stage companies, and so many big players that are doubling down on their bets on AI, that there are going to be a lot of jobs that will be circled in and around that technology in marketing, HR, finance, accounting, operations. So you don't have to be a programmer or an engineer to work for an AI company. And MBAs could do a lot of good in that new field. Phil, what's your take on the future?
Sure, of course. Thank you, John, for inviting me to this panel. And also, I'm excited to be on this panel with Cara as well. And welcome to everyone that's listening across the world, hopefully. And I echo what Cara said about the different factors that's going to affect the future of work. So I don't want to echo that necessarily, but a couple other things that I want to add to that is what I like to say, what people say is the convergence of different industries with technology. So it's not just how technology affects your day-to-day work, but the fact that technology actually is changing different industries. And that it used to be, you can say that, oh, I joined the tech industry as a discrete industry that you might go into after business school or after any education. But now it's healthcare and technology is coming together. Entertainment media, which LA is sort of the hub of, is coming together with technology. Finance is coming together with technology, where we're all, as a business school people, in a way struggling to figure out, okay, is fintech, for example, a standalone industry, or do we put it under financial services? Do we put it under technology? So a lot of those things are really changing, has been changing, and will continue to do so going forward. So really understanding that any industry that you might be interested in will have that technology component or will be integrated closely with technology, that everyone has to have that quote unquote tech savviness in order to be successful in those areas. So I do want to emphasize that piece of it. The other piece that I want to bring up a little bit is that I think we are going through a change in sort of shift in generations of the workforce. I know, there's been multiple conversations over the last several years about the retiring, baby boomer generation. And I know that got delayed a little bit depending, overall, but I think that shift is happening where the millennial and the Gen Z are really becoming the core of the workforce. And I think overall that will and has changed the future of work in terms of what does management look like? What does performance look like? What does work-life balance look like, for example, as a motivator of their jobs? I think those types of changes, I know I sometimes enjoy watching certain like reels and TikTok videos of differences between generations of workers. And sometimes it's usually making fun of certain generations, but there's truth behind some of that does change how all of this is happening. So in addition to the things that Karen mentioned, which I completely agree with, I want to add those two components of convergence with technology with pretty much every industry, as well as sort of the shifting generations of the workforce that MBAs are going to be part of.
Yeah, that's a really good point. In fact, we should follow up on that. Kara, what's your take on what this new generation requires, wants, and desires in the world of work?
Oh my gosh. Well, just on a personal level, I'm a millennial and I have a Gen Z sister. So we're 10 and a half years apart. And I am with you, Phil. I've seen some of those clips as well. I think the positive version of this is that coming out of college, my sister was one of those students who was heavily impacted by COVID and spent half of her college experience either at home or doing school remotely. She, coming out, knew that she didn't want certain things from her job and pursued a career in a very different way than I felt empowered to do when I was that age. I felt like there's a pretty prescribed path when I came out of college, and I've been so impressed watching her navigate a very different type of career, going back to because she knew what she really wanted and didn't want from her career. And I think we're starting to see that with our undergraduates and our specialty masters who are now, we're starting to get them into the MBA program now. Those students I've met seem to have a pretty clear idea of some of the areas that they want from work. And it's not always just a high base salary. There's usually a component of meaning, some sort of connection. It's not that everybody wants to go into a nonprofit, but they are looking for some type of connection to their work, whether it's through the company's mission, values, whether it's sustainability is baked into every single role at the company, or a heavy emphasis on inclusion. I've been really impressed with all of the Gen Z students that I've met so far and their intentionality about what they're looking for in their career.
Yeah. Now the stereotype, and let's play with that for a little bit, because I always think that's fun. Okay. They want a hybrid workplace. They don't want to go to a job 5 days a week. They want a job with meaning, a connection to some social cause that benefits society. And more often than not, they may be looking at careers in things like sustainability or diversity and inclusion instead of finance and consulting, although obviously you could do both of those things in one shot. And the other thing is that they really want balance right away. Where my generation's conception of work-life balance was there are going to be times when you're flat out, and that's just the way it's going to be. And then there are going to be other times when you can just relax a little bit. But there is no thing that can be called work-life balance at any given moment. It occurs over a long period of time. It seems that this generation doesn't accept that. Phil, what's your take?
Those are interesting points, for sure. And I do believe,
remember, I said these are stereotypical attributes.
Of course. And when you first spoke about desire for meaning, and I think one of the key things that we've been working with our students on is that you don't have to go into a job of manager of sustainability at a company to
Right.
be somebody that focuses on sustainability. You could be a financial analyst, and yet when you're making decisions, when you're making budgets, when you're doing strategic planning for your company, that you could incorporate what you're passionate about and what kind of impact you want to make in every job. And I do think that that is a little bit of a shift as well, as Kara mentioned, about how every role could have those components that you're interested in and passionate about, regardless of company, regardless of what area. You don't have to join a nonprofit to be, for example, giving back to the world. So I do think that that component comes into play. Now, in terms of what you just mentioned, John, about a balance, I think one thing that I'm noticing is that the new generation is really good at finding efficiencies, really good at knowing how to do things faster, learning things faster. Whether learning how to fix your plumbing watching YouTube is versus calling a plumber or becoming a plumber is a good thing or not. But that kind of an example of how you can learn certain skills really quickly through the different tools that are available, I believe that the newer generation of workers are really good at that. Now, of course, there are certain things you just can't, learn that way. But there's also other very sophisticated tools of remote learning, virtual learning that has come into play that people can upskill, as Karen mentioned earlier, really, more quickly than before. And I believe some of those efficiencies have come about that allows the new generation to seek that work-life balance and perhaps even achieve it. And I know that that's not going to be the same across all industries. Some industries, work-life balance is going to be defined differently. And if you're joining certain industries, you're going to have to work through that and really to be able to work in those environments effectively. However, I do think that there are certain factors, and I know we talked a little bit about artificial intelligence and how that's affecting work, that is going to allow certain things to be done more effectively and efficiently, which hopefully gives more time for people to think more strategically, think bigger picture, as well as perhaps build work-life balance into the type of work that they do. So I think that those are some of the key differences that have come about. Now, regarding remote work, my personal opinion is that there's still some debate in terms of, and it's still changing, right? Companies we hear are changing their policies every 6 months because they realize, oh, we need more flexibility. Oh no, we need more people in the office. So those are still sort of, I think, shifting, and we haven't found that equilibrium yet across multiple industries, across different companies. But eventually that'll happen. But I think that's going to be another piece that's going to play into people's, how they consider work-life balance. I know that some people rather be in the office to do work versus others enjoy being at home and having that flexibility. So I think those are some key pieces that do come into play when we talk about work-life balance and what the generation of workers that are coming up are going to be seeking in terms of their work.
Yeah, true. Kara, I wonder if you can give me 3 ways that your Gen Z sister is different from your millennial self.
Oh gosh. First, I just want to say, Phil, yes to everything you just said. I was nodding along, like, absolutely. 3 ways that my Gen Z sister, well, I was already starting thinking about some of our incoming MBAs. And as I'm thinking about the differences between us, I think one thing that Phil brought to mind for me that I know that UCLA does and McCombs is very focused on is the individual career coaching. As people come in with already a sense of some of the things that they're looking for, where both programs can offer, and any great MBA program can offer, a number of different individuals to support those students in a really high touch way as they go through the program, so that you can get them, like, yes, in that initial session, let's hear every single thing that you want. I'd love to hear it. And then let's really spend some time thinking strategically about what the top priorities are. Sure, let's have a plan A that's going to meet every single one of those things. I would never tell you to not go after that. But let's also have some really reasonable plan B, C, D, E, perhaps, that are reflective of the current market of things that might change. And so I think while individuals like my sister might have a different list of priorities than I did, or a stronger knowledge of self than I did coming into it, the sort of aspect of the one-to-one coaching, that doesn't change. That's a real constant no matter what's going on in the market. And I think just like UCLA, McCombs has a number of resources that they can then steer those students towards that complement their goals and help them achieve a career that hopefully encapsulates as many of those items as they wanted in fall 1, or as we often see, changes by fall 2.
True.
I'm gonna have to get back to you on my sister.
And I didn't mean to make it personal. I thought we could draw some interesting comparisons there. But obviously, if one thing that has happened that has shaped that generation and all of us to some degree is the pandemic. And what we've learned, if we haven't already learned it, is how life is so unpredictable and filled with shocks, good and bad. And how we respond to those shocks is essential to our resiliency and our ability to be successful. And so I wondered if both of you might step back and say, here's what an MBA experience does to make a person resilient and to make a person really actually take advantage of challenge, not be overcome by them. Kara?
So somebody who's a dear friend and I think an excellent voice in this space is Al D. He's a learning and development facilitator and consultant with a deep knowledge of MBA. Phil's nodding. I'm sure Phil and Al are good friends as well. And Al likes to talk about the MBA being an accelerator. And I think whether you're looking to switch careers or really continue on in the line of profession that you are and just become more of an expert, we use something similar at McCombs, talking about the MBA almost as a startup. Like you yourself are a startup going into the MBA program, and the MBA is the accelerator. So prepare for 2 years of immense growth and everything that comes with being a startup who's having a huge growth phase. There's going to be challenges along the way, and you're going to have to learn to deal with them. In some ways, this also mimics what you might experience out when you're working in industry, where you're going to be encountering unforeseen challenges that you perhaps ChatGPT, all of a sudden this lands on your desk, whatever the next version of ChatGPT is. So at McCombs, we're really focused, of course, on our core courses. But even before students get into that in orientation, we have something that a faculty member leads called emerging technologies. So the idea is that the faculty member is able to cover whatever is top of mind at fall. We'll see what happens for fall 2023. And then after that, some of those, whatever is most current, global events, new technologies that have come up, will be woven into the core curriculum and through the rest of the courses throughout the MBA's experience. And then, of course, we complement that with a lot of experiential learning so that students can take whatever they're learning in the classroom and then, of course, practice it immediately during their time at the program and hopefully fail, because the MBA is the time to be practicing new skills and failing. Ideally, that gives you the opportunity to build some resilience, to practice agility, so that when you're out in industry later, you already experience at least what those feelings are like of planning something out and doesn't go well. You have to reach out to your network, learn another way of doing things, whatever it might be. So gosh, your question was so good, and now I've just completely lost my train of thought. So I would say for McCombs, it's really that formula of classroom learning combined with experiential learning that help build students who are most resilient and able to be agile when they're out in the workforce.
Yep, that's great. Phil, how can MBA programs prepare students for the future of work?
Yeah, definitely. And I think from an academic perspective, as we know, MBAs tend to be a more of a generalist degree in many cases. Almost all MBA programs are going to have core classes that cover different disciplines of MBA, different disciplines of business. And I think that in itself allows someone to be flexible, because you're going to know a little bit about the different parts of business. You're not just focused on one specific function or role throughout your time. Yes, you could specialize and take more classes in certain areas, but overall you come out as a general leader, generalist. And I think that allows that resilience and flexibility to be able to use different skill sets that you gain through the business school education, where sometimes you got to pull out your data and analytics skill set and use that a little bit more effectively. You got to use your creativity every once in a while a little bit more deeply, and people skills and management skills across the board. So I think MBAs in general do come out equipped to deal with the changing environment, changing business environment, the ups and downs of it, as well as the shocks that might come, like COVID or other sort of technology shocks like ChatGPT and other AI tools. So hopefully, I think that is one aspect. The other is something that I know a lot of business schools are focused on, including here at Anderson, is making sure that our students come out with a strong tech savviness. And as I mentioned earlier, technology is really becoming integrated and converging with every industry. So whatever industry you're going to go into, you got to have that baseline of knowing how technology is affecting your industry, knowing how to use the basic tools of it, and be effective in that. And I know many business schools are really making sure that their students have that, and Anderson has definitely focused on that as well in bringing that tech savviness, because again, that is going to allow workers to adapt to the different environments, learn how to utilize different tools. We hope that our students will never be like, oh, never seen that tool before, not going to do it, not going to use it, versus, okay, you know what, I'm comfortable in this environment, I'm comfortable learning how to do this and be able to be successful in that. And then the other piece about an MBA is a lot of top business schools, students will hear about networking and how important the network of that school is in their future careers. And I believe that network is also, and that community that the school helps build is also a huge part of being resilient and being able to adapt to different environments. If you get laid off after working for a few years, yes, you could try to go look for a job on your own, but I know that, oftentimes I'll see some alumni that'll ask their alumni community to source opportunities and connect and build. So yes, that's a negative example of how a network can help, but network can also help you get promoted. Network can help you continue to sort of adapt to the various different examples. And I know that, a lot of the business schools really do focus on building community while you're there as a student, and then that community expanding into the alumni network. And I believe MBAs really do give you sort of the different programming that allows you to build that network effectively so that you can use it, be part of it, contribute to it, both as a student, but of course after graduation as well. And that helps you be resilient, helps you adapt, helps you connect, because you have that community around you that's going to support you there.
Yeah, really good points. Kara, I want you to leverage your master's from Stanford in archaeology and your direct relationships with businesses that recruit students and dig in there and tell me, what are they looking for today? And do business schools lead or lag what employers want?
Oh, well, thank you. Any opportunity to speak about archaeology. I think where that really comes in for this conversation is the reaction to some technologies like ChatGPT of earth-shattering. Well, the history of human civilization is new technologies. That's how we've continued to build the world that we have. So I take some comfort in that actually this is just the truth. You would rather have new technologies coming out than civilization collapse. So as far as the archaeology component, I actually think this is the right trajectory where I have things like ChatGPT coming out. Perhaps the rate of introduction is the most unsettling, where in the past you would have centuries with minimal advancement in certain areas, and now all of a sudden it's essentially every 6 to 12 to 18 months, something that feels monumental comes out. That is just a different experience as a human to the rate of change. Now, I'm so sorry, John. What was the second part of your question? You caught me at archaeology. Oh, what do our businesses lagging?
Using your skills at digging and finding insights, I wonder if you were to dig among your employers who recruit your students, what are they demanding today? And in fact, is what they want at any given time, does it lag what business schools provide, or are business schools actually leading?
This is where I think the business school is such an amazing school to be in at UT Austin's campus, because we have such a close connection with a number of employers. I mean, if you're here at any point during the year, there's always somebody from a company in the building. And so we have this really close relationship where we don't have to wait to have a conversation. So we have regular touch points with our strongest employer partners set up throughout the year to get their thoughts, everybody from the recruiter up to the C-suite. But one of the ways that I do see a gap is that for some employers, it might take several layers of conversation before we understand that at this particular employer, sustainability is actually part of every single role that they have. And because that's their status quo, they don't think of that as a differentiator. Whereas the position that my team sits in, where we speak to a number of different employers every day, we realize that might not be the case for every single employer. And for a student, that's a true differentiator. So there can be a gap in the education of helping students understand that if for you, you're looking to go into a finance role that somehow has a sustainability component, this company might be a really great match for you. And it's not obvious just based on your initial Google search of, or ChatGPT search now, of strongest MBA rotational programs. So that's, I think, where our team works so hard to partner with every other internal stakeholder at McCombs, with the MBA program office, with the coaches, with admission, with the academic advisors, so that we can relay that information as much as possible. And everyone can try to help students make the connection to employers that we think might be a good fit. And going vice versa, we also use these touch points as an opportunity to hear from employers of how are students doing? Like, let's be honest, like, where are they succeeding?
Yeah.
Where is there anything that we need to tweak? And I would say the most common answer that we get is from employers, even including all the way up through the C-suite, is we're looking for people who can demonstrate that they're lifelong learners. Don't worry if it's Python versus C++ versus AI versus a type of ML. Don't worry about that. Demonstrate to us that you can pick up new skills and we can take it from there. Because what we're looking for is somebody who is going to continually learn new things. Because after the MBA, it's not like you're done, right? It's not a 2-year degree and you're static. If you're going to be successful, you're going to continue to need to learn new skills for the rest of your career. Going back to what Phil said about community, I think that's why you continue to see business schools across the country building out lifelong learning opportunities for alumni. That's something that we have at McCombs. We have alumni career support now. We have our own sort of version of an online LinkedIn for all of our alumni to come together with current students. So that's really what we hear from employers, is not so much that students are ever lagging in one particular area, but rather they help us drive students forward to feel committed to picking up the newest skill sets and demonstrating to employers that they will be lifelong learners.
Yeah, really good points. Thank you for that. And I do think that what you said is exactly on point. And Phil, I'm sure you would agree, but I wonder, I'm going to twist this a little bit for you, so it's not redundant. But when you entered the MBA program at that other school in LA that's in the shadow of the one you currently work for, in 2001, 22 years ago, the MBA program, what was taught in a program, is vastly different than today. I mean, even if you look at recent years in terms of what's taught in globalization, in data analytics, in sustainability, in diversity and inclusion, and now in machine learning and AI and its impact or future impact on business and society, it's a world of difference. I mean, I wonder if you might reflect on what you learned in your MBA program way back then. 2003 is when you graduated, and what today's students who at your school will be graduating within days have learned.
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you for aging me as by
Well, I neglected to say that Phil was a very early learner and got his MBA when he was really like 18 years old. But hey.
Anyways, but it's amazing to think that it's been that long. I know that we're having actually a 20-year reunion this fall because I was a 2003 graduate of the MBA program at USC, so excited for that. And you're right, definitely the education is very different. Yes, I took finance, accounting. Yes, I took marketing. The core courses are still there, but the courses themselves, of course, have evolved. I don't remember taking that many cases that involved how technology was affecting those industries. Yes, the internet was definitely still starting to become big. I was part of the group of students that saw the fall of the initial .com boom. So those types of things were being studied and looked into. but it was isolated to a certain sector. It was along those lines. Whereas again, the idea of how technology is affecting everything is of course the norm now. So I think that's probably one of the bigger differences that I notice is the emphasis and importance of technology in not just the learning, but what you're learning and how it's going to affect the different roles that you'll take on. The other piece is, I think, continuing growth of data and how data and data analytics and how data affects decision making across the board. Now, data has always been part of businesses forever, and I know that that's been an important part. But it's been utilized in different ways across different roles and different, and you usually had a specialist who worked on data that helped guide other people to help make decisions with some report or whatever it might be. And I think that's another difference is that currently data is something that all MBAs need to be comfortable, be able to learn to utilize. You don't have to be a statistician or a data scientist per se, but you gotta be able to look at a set of numbers and be able to understand what it might mean for your role, for what you're going into, and be able to make certain decisions out of that. And I know that was emphasized in certain classes I took way back when, but not across the board. Whereas now I believe that is being taught across the board, across different functions and roles and classes, in which that is something that is a baseline skill that I think is evolved a little bit along those lines. So I think those are probably the key things that I can think back in terms of my education way back when compared to now along those lines. But the good things about leadership, management, those things still very much are part of what I learned back then that I think is, of course, still part of MBA curriculums these days.
Yeah. And I think it's important to note that, the fundamental business knowledge in the given disciplines that are studied in business school, accounting, finance, marketing, strategy, operations, are almost a given today, because most of the focus really evolves around how do you develop a true business leader? How do you work collaboratively with others who are very different from yourself? How do you get the best out of people, and how do you persuade people who are facing a challenge and you have some sort of solution for it? How do you get them on board? And those are the elements of an MBA education that definitely prove enduring and incredibly important to the future of work, because those are attributes that ChatGPT 4 or 10 or 12 or 15 will never really be able to achieve. Kara, your point of view on that?
So our assistant dean, Tina Mavely, she refers to those as the durable skills, that as more and more can be automated, there's certain elements about human-centered leadership that any emerging technology will likely be unable to replicate or take over for you. So I think that's a real focus when you look at all MBA programs, is building empathetic leaders who are going to be able to step out into industry, and whether it's a smaller team or they ultimately rise to be leading an entire corporation, are able to tap back into those durable skills of what does it mean to lead ethically? What does it mean to bring people together? What does it mean to be inclusive in the workplace? Whether you have 3 people in an office and another person remote, whatever that might be. So I think, like Phil was saying, those skills are eternal, and the rest you can continue to learn throughout your career and update on. But there are certain skills of being an MBA that will last the rest of your career. And something I really appreciate about the MBAs in this space is, you're on the UT Austin campus with me today, we have a graduate business building. The MBAs like to think, I think it's just their building, but it is all of our graduate students. And something I really appreciate about it is that when you're in this space, you really kind of come to know everybody. So you're a relatively small program on an enormous campus within Austin. So you are able to start practicing some of those leadership skills in what is a really known communal space where people know you, they know who you are, they know your brand. And then you can take it sort of outwards onto campus and to the rest of Austin, whether it's a startup, whether it's a larger company. I mean, even just today, I am not an MBA, but the building is essentially empty. And I stepped out of my office to go meet someone in the lobby and immediately ran into someone and was able to have that sort of personal connection in our space that you just can't necessarily replicate that anywhere else. So I think that's something that when we think about the MBA experience, it's so important to continue to have that in-person element in addition to teaching them how to be leaders in a hybrid environment with teams who are all over the globe. And that's a challenge, but I think that's why you have the MBA. It's an opportunity for them to practice in this space for 2 years before they go out and do it in industry.
Yes, practice, practice, practice. A lot of assignments, a lot of projects, a lot of teamwork, a lot of opportunities to lead, both in extracurricular organizations as well as in the teams where you're doing some work for your classes. I wonder how Anderson is developing people into leaders. Well, what are the things that Anderson does to make sure that when a person graduates from the MBA program, they're ready to lead?
Yes, of course. And I just, was thinking right now when Kara mentioned about the Texas being a large university. We're representing the public universities in the United States, so we're excited about that. And of course, I think Anderson has a similar perspective of a smaller environment within a large university. So I think that's awesome. So I love how Kara brought that out, and I agree with that perfectly as well. In terms of people management and leadership skills, I think we also have built into our curriculum. I think the first class that students actually take when they arrive on campus is called Foundations of Leadership, and it's a 2-week course that they jump right in. So it emphasizes right off the bat how important this particular skill and topic and it is as part of their education before they take accounting, before they take a marketing or strategy. This is where it starts. So I think just from that perspective, there is a big emphasis on that idea. So I do think that that's a big part of it. The other part I think is we have a saying at Anderson called shared success, and we hashtag it and do all those types of things. And I think that's one of the ways that our students are being encouraged to share success. And I think that translates into what kind of a leader that you can become, that we want our students to become in terms of sharing success, that it is a team effort. It is something that you want to lift the entire organization together with you as part of your work, as part of your success. So that's been one of our key tenets that our entire school continues to emphasize, not just in the classroom, but here with us at the Career Service in terms of how students help one another when they're doing through the job search process, how our clubs are a very important part, like you said, about extracurricular activities of student life and allows them to really get involved and actually get something done versus I'm just going to be a consumer of education. So I think those are different ways that I know Anderson has definitely focused on that idea. And we're really looking at building transformative leaders. And we use the word transformative because the world is changing and you have to both transform yourself as well as be the agent of transformation wherever you go. And those are some of the key concepts that we're trying to get our students to learn during their time in Anderson. And hopefully by the time they're out there and continue to grow in their careers, that they'll keep on utilizing that to become successful leaders across the board. So I think that also matches the evolution of business these days in terms of emphasis on teamwork, emphasis on overall development versus just we got to make as much money as possible, no matter the cost type of a perspective. I'm not saying that happened, anytime recently, but really bringing the right perspective on building and making an impact on the world, I think is an important part of what we try to do here at Anderson as well.
Right. Now, look, I think there's no doubt that an MBA would help prepare one, particularly a professional, of course, for the future of work. But is an MBA needed for a professional for the future of work? Kara?
I'll be completely honest. No, I don't think the MBA degree is the right fit for everybody. That said, I think the MBA is a great graduate degree for an incredibly large number of individuals. Something that I really appreciate about an MBA program is it brings together people from so many different backgrounds as far as careers go. You don't necessarily have that in every other graduate degree that you might do on a large university campus. I think it's relatively unusual to find a graduate program where people are coming in from engineering, from banking, from consulting, from nonprofit, and then are also coming together and looking to go out into an incredible range of roles. You don't really get that the same way in medical school or law school. So while I personally do not think that an MBA is required to be a success in the future of work, I do think that it is one of the fastest ways to prepare yourself, both in your own career, to have lifelong career success, and to be an intentional leader, someone who has carved out 2 years of time and stepped out of the workforce for 2 years to really think about what it means to lead the next generation. So that's what, I mean, I just love our MBAs. I gotta say, they tend to be these type A individuals who come in with such ambitions, and they're just such a pleasure to work with. And you always get a little misty-eyed, like the transformation between first year and second year after that summer experience, when they come back and the shift is there is just something about the second year that you can just feel the difference in how they communicate their thoughts in terms of the type of initiative that they take. And then by the time you graduate, honestly, I'm always a little more hopeful about the future of businesses, because I look at these individuals and I think like, no, this is the person who's going to be leading X in a few years. So it brings me a lot of hope, actually, about what you see occur in these individuals in just 2 years of time.
Kara, I think your enthusiasm makes me believe that you wish one of your 2 master's degrees was an MBA.
Oh, I thought about it. I did think about it. And then candidly, I watched my husband go through core, and I watch all of our amazing McCombs students go through core. And I think, good for you.
Phil, you agree that an MBA is not necessary for the future of professional work, however helpful and beneficial it might be?
I mean, I think the word requirement is, of course, a very strong word, right?
Yes.
Is it really required? And I think some people might have just a natural ability to lead and work with people, and the acumen to become leaders. However, I think MBA is, as I think it was mentioned earlier, it's an accelerator, and I do believe that's a big part. Something that you might learn over a period of 5, a decade or longer, in terms of becoming what it means to be an effective leader, what it means to be an expert on a certain maybe field or study or function. MBA perhaps shortens that to perhaps 2 years, or 2 years plus maybe a year or 2 after school, where you're sort of getting your footing in your new career. And I believe that that is one of the strongest benefits of the MBA, is that it is an accelerator to becoming a leader of an organization, to becoming a leader in a certain function, and be able to affect a lot of change or bigger change over a shorter period of time. So I think that's how I think that's why it's important. Now, having said that, I do think that there are certain industries in which an MBA is close to a requirement, right? There are certain industries where, if you look at all the leadership and the management, that they all have MBAs. And if that's the case, then yes, I think if that's the industry that you really believe your future lies, then I think that it could be considered a requirement. However, I think overall, if we look at business, it may not be the case. However, it accelerates that process very quickly. It gives you new skills. It also gives you new skills that you never thought you had. So for example, for myself, I'll just, going back 22 years, I never considered myself a good public speaker. As coming out of college, I got very nervous in front of audiences and so on. And I know this is a Zoom environment, so I don't have 1,000 people staring at me, so it may be a little bit different. But business school is where I did this one group project presentation, where just to be not to be or to boast a little, I kicked butt in that presentation. And I walked out of there with a sense of confidence about how to present to an audience, how to communicate a business concept that I just learned doing that project. And after that, my ability to speak publicly or present sort of jumped significantly and felt so much more comfortable in front of audiences. And that's just one small example of, I know 22 years ago, my experience as an MBA gave me that changed what I thought of myself, what I thought of myself as a leader. And I think that a lot of students and many of our students experience that as well in different ways. Maybe they never thought they were strong in data, but they realize, you know what, I really like this, I'm good at it. And they become somebody that can really utilize that effectively. Or maybe they thought they were never a creative person, but then they take a marketing class to come up with a new marketing campaign about a project and realize, wow, that was a lot of fun. And I believe I can do that and change that as well. And maybe I could have taken a few years to become perhaps a competent public speaker, but business school really allowed me to sort of find that just because I was taking all these classes and presenting all the time and really made that change. So I think that's, again, a outdated example at this point because it's been so long ago, but that's, I think, is one of the ideas of how business schools can really help build leaders in an accelerated way and maybe even, allow someone to find new strengths that they didn't think they had.
Actually, Phil, I just wanted to say,
Karen.
I was going to say, I think it's a great example because it's not necessary, like that is still an experience for MBAs. Like I think about teaching our strategic career course that all the students have to take in their fall one. And you always remember, like day one, it's a question, someone has to come up to the board, write an answer. A woman raises her hand, comes down, it's one of our international students, she does it. And later she told me like a week later in an advising appointment that she was uncomfortable with public speaking and she was doing this MBA with intention. And she promised herself that she was going to be one of the first people to engage in class. Still remember her. She's an amazing alum. And I just like when you were speaking, I was like, yes, I think that is still the case for a lot of students.
And that's an essential value add for an MBA program, the self-confidence that you gain from working with others and going through a 2-year program with lots of challenges, meeting lots of really fascinating people from eclectic backgrounds. And it's not just a 2-year experience because you're graduating into a network of people who will support and encourage you throughout your entire professional career and will become among your closest personal friends. These are the people that you want around your dinner table at night and in the wee hours of the morning to celebrate. And for all the seriousness that we've explored in our conversation about the future of work and how an MBA helps prepare you for it, let's face it, an MBA experience is fun. I mean, the 2 years that you give yourself for personal improvement and self-fulfillment and working on who you are and what you want in life will be a treasured and generous gift to you throughout your entire life. So it may be that an MBA may not be required for the future of work, but I say this to people who are interested in entrepreneurship and say, instead of spending your money and tuition money for an MBA, they should use that money for seed capital. I say, look, if you think you're the next Steve Jobs or Bill Gates, good, go for it. But if you're like a normal human being and know nothing about accounting, nothing about finance, nothing about marketing, leadership, or strategy, and have no networks to speak of for seed capital, for guinea pigs for your business, for ideas about who's going to be your supplier, your manufacturer, or how you're going to get something to market, guess what? An MBA education is essential. And I think that for the future work for most people, unless you're a Steve Jobs or Bill Gates kind of guy or a woman, boy, an MBA is a pretty good life preserver. So when you hit the storm in the middle of the journey and you're tossed off the ship, you'll be floating and get back on the ship before a lot of other people. Hey, Kara and Phil, what a joy it's been to spend this time with you. Thank you so much for your insights and perspectives. And for all of you out there, Kara and Phil are just a small indication of the incredible people who work at McCombs and at Anderson. Explore those programs, check them out, talk to a student ambassador, visit the campus, sit down with a faculty member, experience a class as a fly on the wall, and you'll see how special the MBA experience can be to you for the future of work. Hey, thanks. This is John Byrne with Poets and Quants. You've been watching our Center Court session on the future of work with McCombs School of Business and the Anderson School of Management.